Afternoon. Welcome to a tertiary world. I'm reading you the last story from Park Street, 3rd East West Street, whose colour is yellow, and then I'm moving on to the first 7 memories that arose as I walked down Pigdon Street, the 4th East West Street, whose colour is green. This is Park Street, 316 Park Street, indigo. Once a timber yard stood opposite 316 Park Street. It's empty now, or maybe something goes on there, but it's not much. A father and his son ran it for many years. Though the father was always grumpy and the son always silent and sad, they seemed to be inseparable. I bought quite a lot of timber there, and working out how much it cost was always a tense business. One day as I was rummaging around looking for some offcuts, I heard raised voices. I walked closer and I could hear the son yelling at the top of his voice about something or other. No one yelled back. This surprised me. I turned the corner round a stack of MDF and I could see father and son standing very close. The son was still yelling angrily at the father, and both had very red faces. Suddenly the father put out a hand and placed it on his son's shoulder. The young man stopped yelling and after a few seconds turned around and walked into the office, slamming the door behind him. The father watched his son's movements and then resumed doing whatever it was that he was doing before the conflict began. I'd been pretending to look at some timber so that I could justify my presence in the yard, and I kept doing just that. After a minute, the son came out of the office and walked straight up to his father. He spoke to him in a tone so low I couldn't make out what was being said. The father then pointed to a pile of large beams, and together they began to maneuver them into separate stacks. I watched them work together for a little while until one of them noticed me hanging around and asked me whether they could help me with anything. I said no thanks, and I left. A couple of weeks later, I had to return for something. The son was nowhere to be seen. I casually asked the father, who recognized me as a regular customer, where he was. In hospital, said his father. He's got cancer. He looked up in surprise at hearing himself saying these words as though he had not meant to reveal this information. The tone did not invite further questions, and then, as an afterthought, whilst casually brushing something away that had suddenly made its astonished way down his stubbled cheek, he blurted, "He'll be all right." I'm not sure what happened to them after that, but within a fortnight, the yard had shut down and a big for sale sign had been erected next to the front gate. I never saw either of them again, but I can't help thinking of them each time I drive past, of that strange day and the events that might have unfolded afterwards, events unknown to me. So much was going on in my life at that same time, but that's another story. Things fell apart for me too. But essentially, when I think of them, I'm reminded of how hard it is to know what's going on inside people, what really bugs them, what's hurting deep down. That timber yard is a cafe now, called the Park Cafe. The first story, Pigdon Street, whose colour is green. It's the 4th East West Street. 109 Pigdon Street. Over the last few months, I've taken to having a coffee before work at this small bakery on Pigdon Street. It's tiny, only 5 tables with 2 chairs each, but it's warm, and the fragrance of fresh bread is irresistible. Carlo works here. He greets me each morning in Italian and fills my glass with cool water. He comes from Alberobello in the Puglia region, where long ago I experienced freshly baked bread for the first time. When I was 23, I also worked in a bakery in Paran for about a year, mixing wholemeal dough and turning the bread over inside a wood-fired oven. Being here at 7 in the morning reminds me a bit of that time, of the excitement of lifting the loaves out of the oven and stacking them to cool on a clean cloth spread out on the bakery's brick floor. Carlo went home to Italy for a month recently, and I realised how important he was to the whole experience of starting my day in here. It was like somebody had turned the lights off and the coffee taste had somehow dulled. Now he's back, with his brisk, business-like manner, his ready smile, and his desire to get everything right, wishing me and other customers a buongiorno, like he really means it. The lights are back on again. At times I found myself sitting in here with eyes closed, listening to him chatting in Italian with one of the pastry cooks, feeling just for a moment that this is 1968 and I'm in Alberobello's sunny square, sitting outside the bakery with my soul wide open. My whole life is ahead of me, I think, as I joyfully bite into a piece of golden, warm bread. Within a single life, so much intersects. Cycles seem to represent the same landscapes, same faces, same feelings over and over and over again. Just like spring. Except with spring, you never think you've seen it before, or that's at least my experience. It's always like a new birth. I can't remember the spring before this one. Until tomorrow when I continue with Pigdon Street. Memories. Have a lovely afternoon. Till then.